Welcome to Texas Border Watch, your eyes on the front line for all things border security, immigration, and local policy. I'm Jordan Elder. Miles of shipping containers and razor wire have been lining the Rio Grande for years, but now a state representative in Eagle Pass says it's time to get rid of it. Representative Eddie Morales, who is a Democrat, says all of these measures are outdated and unnecessary at this point. We've shown you how significantly crossings have dropped in that area, but Morales says this actually stemmed from a roadblock city officials faced. Eagle Pass and TxDOT engineers were trying to inspect the international bridge, but they struggled to get to the pillars because of overgrown foliage and all of that wire. Luckily, the fire department helped take them to the pillar by boat so they could still do their work, but Morales said this started a larger conversation. He asked the governor in this letter to start returning Eagle Pass and Shelby Park to the way it used to be. He says there's a balance to be struck between border security and a sense of normalcy for his community. Now, keep in mind, Morales did vote for Operation Lone Star when it began because this area was such a hot spot for illegal crossings. Texas officials have said in the past that they can't let up on the border because it would signal to migrants that it's okay to cross. In the past few months, though, Texas operations have largely shifted toward assisting federal agents with immigration issues. So again, that letter was to the governor's office. I also reached out to Governor Abbott's office to see if removing the razor wire and the shipping containers might be a possibility. In short, their answer was no. So the long form of their answer, though, is this. They said Texas deployed every tool and strategy available to stop the unprecedented levels of illegal immigration under former President Biden, including hundreds of miles of strategic barriers. Thanks to these strategies and President Trump's strong, decisive leadership to close the border, illegal crossings are at a record low. Texas will not relent in this mission to secure the border and protect Texans and Americans. So that will not relent is what is signaling that these measures are going to stay up, and it's going to look the same for now. Several members of the U.S. Coast Guard are being surged to the southern border, and this new operation is being referred to as Operation Riverwall. So we want to give you an inside look into what this is going to mean. Back in January, President Trump declared a national emergency at the border. His administration followed up in March, forming Joint Task Force Southern Border. That allowed troops under the Department of War to support Homeland Security's border mission. So under Operation Riverwall, the agency is going to send in more than 100 boats and hundreds of personnel, including shallow watercraft, tactical teams, and command and control assets. The Coast Guard says the goal is to stop drugs and deter illegal crossings along a 260-mile stretch of the river that forms part of the U.S. border. Officials aren't saying exactly how many people or how many resources are involved, citing operational security concerns. The Coast Guard held a press conference about this to answer some of the questions, so we want to show you a piece of that.
The Coast Guard launched Operation Riverwall and mobilized additional assets to secure and defend the U.S. border from illegal immigration and illicit activities along the 260 miles of the Rio Grande Valley. We are working collaboratively with our federal, state, and local partner agencies by leveraging our unique authorities and capabilities to control our border. The threat out here is evolving, and it's always changing. Our adversaries are using new techniques, new procedures, new technology. So to combat that, we're surging forces onto the Rio Grande to provide more presence so we can deter that illegal activity. We've already helped with several different apprehensions along the river. I think it's probably close to about 20 at this point. Challenging environment is probably the biggest thing that they're encountering at the moment, and getting used to the river and the operations that we're doing.
But also in terms of the actual, like the operation itself,
Yep.
in terms of people apprehension.
Correct. Yep. So we're conducting standard Coast Guard law enforcement patrols up and down the river, looking for nefarious activity. So if we see an illegal immigrant crossing the river, whether that's on a raft, walking, or swimming, we'll pull them out. If we identify an area that maybe we could see where they already crossed, we'll coordinate with our partners to make sure that we can potentially vector them in for an apprehension. The river is right along the border between U.S. and Mexico, so that's federal waters. So our inherent Title 14 law enforcement authorities allow us to enforce U.S. laws and treaties along the water. So if we see someone crossing the river, that is obviously an illegal crossing into the United States, so that gives us the authority to apprehend them. As for the 20-ish folks that we have apprehended since we've been here, we've worked with our Border Patrol partners to make sure that we detain and apprehend them and make sure that they are taken into custody.
You might remember from a couple weeks ago, we actually took you out on the Rio Grande with Border Patrol to show you how airboats and those kinds of operations help along the border. Border Patrol says that watercraft and things like that are crucial when it comes to the overall mission. What is that resource like for your team to be able to have something like that, to be able to deploy immediately if there's something going on the Rio Grande?
No, it's absolutely important, and you called it on the airboat. As far as this is very unique to Del Rio sector and some of the sectors downriver where the shallow waters. The only way we're able to navigate these waters is through the use of an airboat, and it's very important because we want to prevent and deter those illegal entries.
An international bridge here in Texas looked more like a zoo this week. And I want to warn you, if you're not into snakes, bugs, creepy crawlies, you might want to skip this segment. So this picture is from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and in all of these containers, there are over 160 living reptiles and bug species. This was at the Ansel Duas International Bridge in Texas. They caught a driver that was trying to transport all of these animals into Mexico. It was a silver Toyota truck. The vehicle was selected for further inspection because when you cross back and forth on the border, sometimes your vehicle gets pulled. They'll do the x-ray, they'll look through it specifically for this reason. They want to make sure you're not bringing anything back and forth that you're not supposed to. In this case, this person was. The physical inspection led to the discovery of 163 reptiles and arthropods. So I want to give you an example of just some of the things that were in all of these containers. These are not CBP photos. These are just example photos to show you what all was in there. But again, if you don't like snakes and bugs, you're going to want to look away for this. Okay, there were 24 royal pythons, 11 spotted salamanders, 10 red-eyed tree frogs, and we're checking with Border Patrol because in their release they said there were 10 sick red-eyed tree frogs. As far as I can tell, and I am not an animal expert, that's not a species, so I'm wondering if the frogs themselves were sick in transport and needed medical attention, so we're checking on that. 10 albino milk snakes, 10 orange milk snakes, and then 10 Mexican black king snakes, along with 4 tarantulas, and several different types of ball pythons. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service took custody of all of these animals. They are going to oversee what happens to them from there. But quite a scare, I'm sure, for the border officials that went through and found all of this in a silver truck. That's all we've got for you this week. I'm going to reset that so we don't have to look at it. Anyway, that's all for this week's Texas Border Watch. We will be back next week. And if you want to watch any of our other episodes, we've got a playlist on YouTube for you to look back through. We will see you back here next week.